Alright, wargame enthusiasts, Jason here. I've got, some of you may remember this from a while ago. And I pulled this out again. It's John Butterfield's Battle of the Bulge, and this came out for iPad and iPhone. It's also very, very recently been officially released as a board game. This stuff came out as part of the Kickstarter campaign, if memory serves. This stuff being the paper playtest components that people use to, well, playtest the game. So that's what we're looking at, and as I mentioned a while ago, this map rather, was enlarged because I'm want to do that typically, so that's how I roll. Otherwise, you're looking at what is it? Yeah, here's the map as would have accompanied the Kickstarter campaign, so you can see how tiny that is. So let's fix this back. What we're looking at specifically is just after the December 16th turn, and this is where the Germans are allowed quite a bit of leeway, being it was a surprise attack, etc. So you've got your initial startup. Germans, they're not pushed too far out, but they're in there a little bit. And as you can see, they got a long way to go. Red cubes are victory point hexes or areas. And ultimately what you would like to do is reach the Meuse River and or get units off the board. So you've got up until December 28th to do that, but I'm telling you, if it starts getting that late in the game, I think it's pretty much lights out for Germany. So with the December 16th opening turn, worked out. I don't know that it could have worked out any better for Germany. And I should add, obviously, these are Axis and Allies components that I'm using for this. The pieces these pieces did not accompany the Kickstarter stuff. But nonetheless, Germans kicked off December 16th with a bang and knocked out 3 infantry units, a mech unit, and an armored unit while suffering no losses of their own. So flawlessly. Also looks like this unit here will most likely become, this unit is isolated, out of supply, etc. I need to mark that. Looks like this unit may be looking at the same fate. I don't remember what Elsenborn I took over. I rolled into Malmedy, Saint-Vith, and Clairvaux, rolled into Louvain. I think I'm missing 1 or 2 others. So made some somewhat of a territorial gain. I'm not sure if that went as well as I would have liked it to. Now when you're moving, infantry units are only allowed 1 space at a time, and armor and mech, I believe, is allowed 2 spaces at a time if it is the spaces are joined by roads. So you're forced to make some tough choices in that respect. What else? Also, combat. Let's see. Yeah, combat in here is fairly easy and graspable and all that. It's buckets of dice, D10 system. You're gonna, let's just run through a typical example. You're gonna activate an area, and all units in that area then are allowed to move and or attack, depending. So once you do that, you then you can move into enemy occupied areas. If that is the case, then that will result in combat. Relatively simultaneously, roll for the attacker, and you've got a number of modifiers here, as you might imagine. You've got a modifier as the attacker for armor. Well, not a modifier, but your base to hit chance. For example, if your armor is 1 through 4 on a D10, infantry and mech 1 through 3. If you're unsupplied, it's 1 or 2, regardless of unit type. And elite armor gets a whopping 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5 chance to hit out of 10. And then your modifiers are as such for the attacker. You get +1s for surprise, so any German attack that takes place on December 16th automatically gets +1 hands down. You've got, what else would be in play here? If the defenders are isolated, you're going to add 2. If they're out of supply, you're going to add another 2. If the space is clear terrain, you're going to add 1. If the defender includes armor, you're going to subtract 1. And if the defender it has at least half elite infantry, you're going to subtract 1. So after all that, you roll your D10 for each strength point, which I have represented with the chits here. So this unit here, for example, would be a strength of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I would roll 5 die 10 based on unit type to get my base to hit chance number, and then add the modifiers. There is retreat in here as the defender, not the attacker. If you roll the exact number of hits equal to the remaining strength of the defender, they will in fact retreat, although they also have the option to do so otherwise. Let me think. Stacking in here, not too much allowed. You're allowed 3 separate unit types of one side in an area. So you could have up to 6 in a single area, but it would have to be 3 German, 3 Allied. And that's really basically it, other than, like I said, each day or turn, let's call it day, is broken down to a random amount of turns. And so as the Germans, you get the first go, and you get 3 free attacks to represent surprise. And then it's the Allies' turn. Now, before the Allies go and have their turn, at the end of the German surprise attack, you'll roll a d10, check a chart, and see how much time has passed for that turn. And it could be anywhere from a half hour to 3 hours, depending on the roll. And I really like that aspect. I've mentioned this again in the past regarding this game. It's a mechanic of this game that I really adore. And then the initiative passes back. It's back and forth. You go, I go, and then activate the Germans. But every time a unit activates, at the end of that activation, you're going to roll on this time chart to see how much time has passed. So you never really know how much time a turn will consist of, or how many units you will be able to activate, and how many units the other side will be able to activate. So it's all pretty intriguing stuff, in my opinion. And then the last couple of things I would add is, as you can imagine and also see here, each day of progression gets relatively worse for the Germans. The Americans caught with their pants down, so to speak. You know, you hear about the hasty retreat, and you know, breakfast was still cooking in the frying pan when the Germans rolled in, and the Americans just tore tail and ran. Well, that's true to an extent, but also based on the circumstances, it wasn't just that these were green, fresh, and run ragged troops that the Germans had run into. There was that in play as well, but given that situation, the Americans really did. They chose the best option available to them at the time, and that is to pull back. So, you know, you can't necessarily fault them for what they did. I think that just about covers. I really like this game, and again, I've mentioned this before. This is why I brought this out again and revisited it. Don't know that I've ever won as the Germans. Can you believe that? Probably not so hard to believe. But again, the first turn here, or the first day rather, has really gone perfectly for the Germans. So I'm confident maybe this time I can pull it off. And of course you run into clear weather after a while, and that represents the ability of the allies to throw in air power, and that's run as a modifier for an attacker's to hit chance. So when the Americans and or the British, depending on the day, attack, you'll have that air power modifier added. So yeah, and then there's a few other little morsels in here. I think you've got the let's see, Axis Commando operation. Based on either, you're going to roll a die, and it's going to happen either on the 17th, the 18th, and the 19th, and it's going to allow you to prevent an allied unit from activating that day. So that's pretty neat. And then you've got all kinds of manner of scoring victory points, determining, depending on, again, the space occupied or having reached the Muse and exited units, etc. Looks like you've got Verlage and Namur, Bastogne, among other places, as pretty big victory point areas. So that's the game. I have a lot of fun playing it. Thought I'd drag it back out, and see if I can keep you guys abreast of any developments regarding this as the coming days pass. So that's it. Cut you guys loose. Talk to you next time.